I want you to imagine something for a moment. You've lived your entire life devoted to one faith, never questioning its teachings. Then, in an instant, you're shown a truth that contradicts everything you've ever believed. What would you do? This is the challenge Zob Farooqi faced after her near-death experience, and now I'm posing it to you. As you watch this video, I challenge you to set aside your preconceptions about religion, life after death, and the nature of God. Open your mind to the possibility that truth might exist beyond the boundaries of your current beliefs. Are you ready to confront the questions that Zob's experience raises about your own faith and understanding of the divine? Let's explore her extraordinary journey together and see where it leads us. Zob Farooqi's life in Lansing, Michigan was a testament to her unwavering faith. As a devout Muslim woman, every aspect of her daily routine revolved around her religious beliefs. From the moment she woke up to the 5 daily prayers that punctuated her day, Zob's devotion was evident in everything she did. I first met Zob at a local community center where she volunteered. Her warm smile and gentle demeanor immediately put everyone at ease. She often spoke about how her faith gave her strength and purpose. "Islam isn't just a religion," she once told me. "It's a way of life that guides every decision I make." Zob's family life was equally centered around their shared beliefs. Her husband, Rashid, worked as an engineer, while Zob homeschooled their 3 children. Their oldest daughter, Amira, was preparing for college, but still made time to help with her younger siblings and attend religious classes at the local mosque. Every Friday, the Farooqi family would join their community for Jumu'ah prayers. Zob took great pride in preparing a special meal afterward, inviting friends and neighbors to share in their blessings. These gatherings were filled with laughter, discussion of scripture, and a palpable sense of belonging. Zob's faith extended beyond her personal life and into her work as well. She ran a small business selling handmade prayer rugs and Islamic calligraphy, seeing it as a way to share the beauty of her religion with others. Each piece she created was infused with prayers and blessings, a physical manifestation of her devotion. The certainty of her beliefs provided Zob with a sense of security that seemed unshakable. She often said that knowing Allah's plan gave her comfort in difficult times and joy in moments of happiness. Her faith was her anchor, steadying her through life's ups and downs. Yet, as I look back now, I can't help but see the irony in how confident Zob was in her understanding of the divine. She had never questioned her beliefs, never entertained the possibility that there might be more to the spiritual realm than what she had been taught. Her certainty was both a source of strength and a potential weakness. On what would be her last morning as a devout Muslim, unaware of the life-altering experience that lay ahead, Zob went about her usual routine. She woke before dawn for Fajr prayer, prepared breakfast for her family, and sent her children off to their various activities. As she settled into her workshop to begin work on a new prayer rug, she had no idea that in just a few hours, everything she believed about life, death, and the nature of God would be called into question. Little did Zob know that fate had something extraordinary in store for her. As the day progressed, an unseen danger was quietly building in her home, setting the stage for an event that would shatter her worldview and force her to confront truths she never imagined existed. The certainty that had defined her life was about to be tested in ways she could never have anticipated. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to die? Zob Farooqi never did, until the day she experienced it firsthand. As she prepared breakfast for her family that morning, she couldn't have imagined that by afternoon her heart would stop beating for over 4 minutes. The journey she took during those moments would change her forever. The day started like any other for Zob. She woke up early, said her morning prayers, and began preparing a hearty breakfast for her family. As she moved around the kitchen, she felt a slight dizziness, but brushed it off as nothing serious. Her husband Rashid had already left for work, and her children were getting ready for school. As Zob packed lunches and helped her youngest son tie his shoelaces, she noticed a dull headache forming. She thought perhaps she hadn't slept well, but continued with her morning routine. She waved goodbye to her children as they left for school, then settled into her workshop to begin work on a new prayer rug. It was then that the symptoms began to worsen. The room seemed to spin, and her headache intensified. Zob tried to stand but found herself unsteady on her feet. She reached for her phone, intending to call Rashid, but her vision blurred, and she couldn't focus on the screen. What Zob didn't know was that a silent killer had been lurking in her home for weeks. The carbon monoxide detector, which should have warned her of the danger, had been malfunctioning due to dead batteries. This colorless, odorless gas had been slowly filling her home, poisoning her with every breath. As the morning wore on, Zob's condition deteriorated rapidly. She managed to stumble to the living room, collapsing onto the couch. Her breathing became labored, and she felt an overwhelming urge to sleep. In her confused state, she didn't realize that giving in to this urge could be fatal. It was Amira, Zob's eldest daughter, who found her mother unconscious when she returned home early from college. Panic-stricken, Amira immediately called emergency services. The dispatcher instructed her to perform CPR while they sent an ambulance. For 4 minutes and 37 seconds, Zob's heart had stopped beating. This period of clinical death felt like an eternity to Amira, as she desperately tried to revive her mother. When the paramedics arrived, they took over, using a defibrillator to shock Zob's heart back into rhythm. As Zob was rushed to the hospital, her family gathered, shaken by how close they had come to losing her. They were grateful for Amira's quick thinking and the swift response of the emergency services. But none of them could have imagined what Zob had experienced during those crucial minutes when her heart had stopped. In those moments between life and death, Zob had embarked on a journey that would challenge everything she believed about faith, life, and the nature of existence itself. As she lay unconscious in the ambulance, her mind was awakening to a reality beyond anything she had ever imagined. Little did her family know that the Zob they knew would never be the same again. While Zob's physical body lay motionless, her consciousness awakened to a reality beyond our world. What she experienced in those few minutes would shatter her understanding of life, death, and everything she thought she knew. Have you ever had a moment that changed your entire perspective on existence? The first thing I noticed was the overwhelming sense of peace. It felt like a warm embrace, washing away all my worries and fears. I found myself floating in a sea of soft, golden light. There was no pain, no confusion, just a profound sense of clarity and calm. I remember thinking, is this what it feels like to die? As I tried to make sense of my surroundings, I became aware of a presence. It wasn't anything I could see with my eyes, but I felt it deep within my soul. The air around me seemed to shimmer and pulse with energy. Suddenly, a being of pure light appeared before me. It was unlike anything I had ever seen or imagined, radiant, powerful, and filled with love. I knew instinctively that this was an angel, though it bore little resemblance to the winged figures I had learned about in my Islamic teachings. The angel didn't speak with words, but somehow I understood everything it communicated. It showed me my life, not as a series of events, but as ripples spreading out from every choice I had made. I saw how my actions had affected others, both the kindnesses and the unintentional hurts. It was overwhelming to witness the far-reaching consequences of even my smallest decisions. I felt a deep sense of responsibility, realizing that every interaction held more significance than I had ever imagined. As I grappled with these revelations, the angel began to show me something even more profound. Scenes from history unfolded before me, but they were different from what I had been taught. I saw events that contradicted the narratives I had believed my whole life. The foundations of my faith began to tremble. I witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus, not as a near miss as I had been told, but as a real and sacrificial act. I saw the early spread of Christianity not as a corruption of truth, but as a fulfillment of divine plan. With each new vision, my certainty crumbled a little more. The angel showed me the vast courtroom of light where souls were judged. To my shock, I saw devout Muslims I had known and respected descending into darkness. Their sincere belief had not been enough. I realized with growing horror that sincerity alone did not guarantee salvation. As these truths washed over me, I felt a mixture of awe and deep sadness. Everything I had built my life upon was being called into question. The angel communicated not judgment, but compassion, as if to say, now you understand, and with understanding comes responsibility. I knew in that moment that if I returned to my life, nothing would ever be the same. The comfortable certainty of my faith had been replaced by a vast, uncertain landscape of spiritual truth. But even as I felt lost, I sensed a greater purpose unfolding. As the angel's presence began to fade, I felt myself being drawn towards an even brighter light. I knew instinctively that my journey was not yet complete. There was more to learn, more to understand. And at the center of that light, I sensed a presence that would change everything I thought I knew about God. As I drew closer to that radiant presence, I had no idea that what I was about to witness would challenge everything I thought I knew about righteousness and eternal destiny. The scene before me was unlike anything I had ever imagined. Souls were moving in different directions, some ascending towards a brilliant light, while others descended into a darkness that made my heart ache. I asked the angel about this, and the answer shook me to my core. Each soul's path is determined by their relationship with the truth, the angel explained. It's not about following rules or rituals, but about accepting the grace offered through faith in Jesus Christ. As I watched, I began to recognize faces in the crowd of souls. There was my neighbor, who had always been kind to everyone. And there, to my shock, was the imam from our local mosque, a man I had deeply respected for his knowledge and piety. Both were descending into the darkness. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. These were good people, devoted Muslims, who had dedicated their lives to serving Allah. How could they be heading towards what looked like eternal separation from God? The angel sensed my distress and gently said, "Look closer, Zob. What do you see?" As I focused, I noticed something that horrified me even more. Countless devout Muslims, people I had known and admired for their faith, were among those descending. Their faces showed confusion and anguish as they realized their sincerely held beliefs had led them astray. I turned to the angel, desperate for an explanation. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "They believed so strongly. They lived such righteous lives." The angel's response was filled with compassion, but also with a truth that cut through all my preconceptions. "Sincerity of belief is not enough for salvation," the angel said. "Many of these souls earnestly prayed and followed their teachings faithfully, but they rejected the true path to salvation through Jesus Christ." I saw scenes of people arriving in heaven, many of them former Muslims like myself. Their joy was palpable, but so was their shock. "We were so certain," one of them said, "but we had missed the truth entirely." As this revelation sank in, I felt a profound shift in my understanding. The salvation I had always believed in, earned through good deeds and devotion to Allah, was not the true path at all. Instead, I was seeing a salvation based on grace, freely given but requiring acceptance of Jesus as more than just a prophet. The weight of this truth was almost unbearable. I thought of all the people I had influenced in my life, guiding them in what I now realized was the wrong direction. The angel seemed to read my thoughts. "Your experience here is not just for you," the angel said. "You will have the opportunity to share this truth with others to help them find the way." As I pondered this new responsibility, I felt myself being drawn even closer to the source of that brilliant light. I knew, somehow, that I was about to come face to face with Jesus himself. My heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and fear. What would he say to me, a woman who had spent her whole life denying his divinity? Have you ever had a belief so fundamental to your identity that losing it felt like losing yourself? As I approached the source of that brilliant light, I was about to experience exactly that. The Jesus I was about to meet wasn't just a prophet. He was something far more profound, and his words would change everything. As I drew closer, the light grew impossibly brighter. I felt overwhelmed by a presence so powerful and loving that it threatened to consume me. In that moment, I knew without a doubt that I was in the presence of Jesus Christ. But this wasn't the Jesus I had learned about in my Islamic teachings. This was God himself, radiating a love so intense it felt almost tangible. My mind reeled, struggling to reconcile what I was experiencing with everything I had believed my entire life. How could Jesus be God? What about Allah? What about the strict monotheism I had always adhered to? As these questions swirled in my mind, I felt a gentle reassurance wash over me, as if Jesus himself was calming my troubled thoughts. Suddenly, I understood the Trinity in a way that had never made sense to me before. It wasn't three separate gods, as I'd always thought Christians believed. Instead, I saw one God in three persons, a concept that suddenly felt so clear and logical that I wondered how I had never grasped it before. The complexity of God's nature unfolded before me, beautiful in its unity and diversity. As Jesus prepared to speak, I felt a mixture of anticipation and fear. What would he say to me, a woman who had spent her whole life denying his divinity? Would he condemn me for my past beliefs? But when he spoke, his voice was filled with nothing but love and compassion. Jesus revealed to me the truth about his death on the cross and his resurrection. Events I had always been taught were fabrications. He showed me how his sacrifice was the ultimate expression of God's love for humanity, offering salvation not through our own efforts, but through his grace. I saw scenes from history that confirmed everything he was telling me, leaving no room for doubt. As the truth of his words sank in, I felt a profound shift in my understanding of salvation. It wasn't about following rules or accumulating good deeds. It was about accepting the gift of grace that Jesus offered. I realized that this was why I had seen devout Muslims descending into darkness. Their sincere belief and good works weren't enough without accepting Jesus as their savior. In that moment, I knew I could never go back to my old beliefs. Jesus wasn't just a prophet. He was my Lord and Savior. The weight of this realization was both terrifying and liberating. I had found a truth far greater than anything I had known before, but I also knew that accepting it would mean leaving behind the identity I had built my entire life around. As my time with Jesus came to an end, I felt a new sense of purpose growing within me. I knew that what I had learned wasn't just for me, it was meant to be shared. The implications of this new understanding were staggering. How many others like me were sincerely seeking God but missing the truth? I realized that my journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And have you ever wondered about the true impact of your words and actions on others? As my encounter with Jesus faded, I found myself face to face with a startling revelation about the ripple effects of my own influence. What I learned next would challenge everything I thought I knew about spiritual responsibility. The angel guided me to what looked like an endless library. Shelves stretched as far as I could see, filled with books of every color and size. Each book represents a life, the angel explained, including yours, Zob. I watched in awe as the angel plucked a book from the shelf, my book. As we flipped through the pages, I saw my life unfold before me. But it wasn't just my actions I saw. I witnessed how my words and beliefs had influenced others. I saw friends and family members adopting stricter religious practices because of my encouragement. I watched as people I had taught turned away from exploring other faiths, convinced by my certainty that Islam was the only true path. The weight of these revelations was almost unbearable. "I didn't know," I whispered, feeling a deep sense of remorse. The angel's response was gentle but firm. "Ignorance doesn't absolve us of responsibility, Zob. Our words and actions have consequences whether we intend them or not." We continued through the library, and the angel showed me alternate paths, the what-ifs of my life. I saw versions of myself who had questioned their beliefs earlier, who had been open to other perspectives. In these alternate realities, my influence had led people towards truth rather than away from it. As we reached the end of my book, I felt a growing sense of dread. "Am I to be judged for leading others astray?" I asked, my voice trembling. The angel nodded solemnly. "We all face judgment for our influence, Zob. But remember, judgment isn't just about punishment. It's about understanding and growth." In that moment, I realized the full weight of my spiritual responsibility. Every conversation about faith, every piece of advice I had given, it all carried far more significance than I had ever imagined. I thought about my children, my students at the Islamic school, my neighbors who had looked to me as an example of devout faith. How many had I unintentionally led away from the truth? But just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, the angel spoke again. "Your story isn't finished, Zob. Your experience here, the truths you've learned, they can be a powerful testimony. You have the opportunity to help others find the path you've discovered." I felt a glimmer of hope. Could my future actions help balance the scales? Could I use my influence for good to lead people towards the truth about Jesus? The angel seemed to sense my thoughts and nodded encouragingly. As our time in the library came to an end, I knew with certainty that I had to return. I had a new mission, a new purpose. The weight of my past influence was heavy, but the potential of my future testimony gave me strength. I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the truth and driven by a deep desire to share it with others. Little did I know just how difficult that journey would be, or how profoundly it would change not just my life, but the lives of those around me. Have you ever felt the weight of a secret so profound it could shatter your entire world? As I returned to consciousness, I knew I faced an impossible choice: keep silent and betray my newfound faith, or speak out and risk losing everyone dear to me. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was my family's relieved faces. But as I tried to explain what I'd experienced, their relief turned to confusion and concern. My husband, Rashid, held my hand tightly, his eyes searching mine for some explanation. "Zob, you're not making sense," he said gently. "You need to rest." But I couldn't rest. The truth I'd learned burned inside me, demanding to be shared. As the days passed and I regained my strength, I tried to tell my family about Jesus, about the reality of salvation through Him alone. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to anger. My children looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. Rashid suggested I see a therapist, convinced the lack of oxygen had affected my brain. The rejection from my Muslim community was swift and harsh. Word spread quickly about my delusions, and friends I'd known for decades stopped talking to me. The imam from our mosque came to visit, but not to offer comfort. He suggested I needed psychiatric help and warned me about the dangers of apostasy. The hardest part was the pain I saw in my parents' eyes when I called them in Pakistan. "Beta, please," my mother begged. "Take back these words. You're breaking our hearts." Their distress was palpable, even across the thousands of miles separating us. Despite the challenges, I couldn't deny the truth I'd experienced. I began to share my story more widely, starting with a small group at a local church. To my surprise, 3 people accepted Christ that very first night. It was a glimmer of hope in the midst of my struggles. As word of my testimony spread, something unexpected happened. I started receiving messages from other Muslims who had doubts about their faith. They came to me in secret, asking questions, sharing their own supernatural experiences that didn't fit with Islamic teachings. Our home, once a gathering place for Muslim friends and neighbors, became a meeting place of a different kind. Former Muslims, spiritual seekers, and even those who'd had their own near-death experiences began to gather in our living room. We'd sit for hours, discussing faith, sharing stories, and studying the Bible together. One night, as I watched my daughter Amira quietly listening to our discussions, I saw a spark of curiosity in her eyes. She began asking her own questions, tentatively exploring the faith I'd embraced. It was a bittersweet moment. I grieved for the beliefs we'd once shared, but felt hope for the journey she was beginning. The path ahead wasn't easy. I lost old friends but gained new ones. My relationship with Rashid was strained, but we were working through it day by day. And while some doors closed, others opened in unexpected ways. I found myself speaking at churches, sharing my story with anyone who would listen. As I reflect on the past 2 years, I'm amazed at how far I've come. The journey has been painful, but also incredibly rewarding. Every time I see someone's eyes light up with understanding, every time a seeker finds the truth they've been looking for, I know that this is why I was given a second chance at life. My mission is clear: to share the message of God's love and the truth about salvation through Jesus Christ, no matter the cost. The cost of sharing my truth was high, but the rewards were beyond measure. As I looked back on the 2 years since my encounter with Jesus, I realized my life had been completely transformed. But it wasn't just my life that was changing. What I saw happening in my own daughter's heart would challenge everything I thought I knew about faith and family. Every morning, I wake up with a sense of purpose that I never had before. My home, once a place where I taught strict Islamic principles, has become a sanctuary for seekers of all kinds. People from different backgrounds gather in our living room, hungry for the truth I've experienced. It's not always easy. There are still moments when I catch myself wondering if I've made the right choice, especially when I see the pain in my husband's eyes. The challenges I face are real and constant. Social media can be brutal, with former friends and even strangers attacking my character and questioning my sanity. There are days when the weight of rejection from my community feels almost unbearable. But then I remember the faces of those who've found hope through my testimony, and I know I can't stay silent. My daughter Amira has been watching this transformation with curious eyes. At first, she was confused and hurt by my change in beliefs, but over time, I've seen a shift in her. She started asking questions about Jesus, wanting to know more about what I'd experienced. One evening, she surprised me by asking if we could pray together, to Jesus. The joy I felt in that moment was indescribable. Amira's journey is just beginning, and I'm careful not to push her. But seeing her explore this new faith on her own terms fills me with hope. She's even expressed interest in participating in some of the sacraments, a concept so foreign to our previous life. It's a delicate balance, respecting her process while gently guiding her towards the truth I now know. My ultimate goal has become clear: to share the message of God's love and the truth about salvation through Jesus Christ, no matter the personal cost. It's not an easy path. There are still family dinners filled with tense silences and carefully avoided topics. But I've committed to this mission, knowing that the truth I experienced is too important to keep to myself. The joy of seeing lives transformed makes every difficulty worthwhile. I remember a recent speaking engagement where 3 people accepted Christ after hearing my story. Their faces, filled with the same wonder and awe I felt during my near-death experience, remind me why I continue to share my testimony. As I look towards the future, I know there will be more challenges. But I also know that I'm not alone on this journey. The truth I encountered on the other side has become my anchor, giving me strength to face whatever lies ahead. And with each person who finds hope through my story, I'm reminded that this new purpose is far greater than anything I could have imagined in my previous life. As I reflect on Zob's incredible journey, I'm struck by the universal truths she encountered. Her experience challenges us to look beyond our comfortable beliefs and consider the possibility that there's more to spiritual reality than we've imagined. What if the afterlife isn't quite what we've been taught? What if our actions and beliefs have far-reaching consequences we can't see? I invite you to take a moment and examine your own faith. Are there questions you've been afraid to ask? Doubts you've pushed aside? Zob's story reminds us that seeking truth, even when it's uncomfortable, can lead to profound transformation. This conversation about faith and eternity is too important to keep to ourselves. If Zob's experience has made you think, I encourage you to share this video with others. Let's continue this dialogue, challenge our assumptions, and open our hearts to new possibilities. After all, what could be more important than understanding the true nature of our existence?